So thank you guys so much for coming. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day. I know that time is in short supply for a lot of us, so I really do appreciate you being here and giving us your attention and your presence. I'm Zoe Devmani. I'm a brand strategist and storyteller. I am an independent consultant, and I help climate startups grow by getting super clear on their storytelling. I work with individual climate startups, VCs, accelerators, and communities like Work on Climate. And I do a lot of pitch decks. I also do brand strategy and brand design. One sec here, I'm adjusting my fan. It's a very hot day in LA. As I mentioned, I'm in Los Angeles. And a little bit about my background. These are some brands that I used to work on in the before times, before I started working on climate work. I've been doing this for 10 years, working on graphic design. At all these jobs, I really tried my best to do the right thing by the planet. I would put my recycled paper in the printer, and I would, encourage my coworkers to recycle. And I even planted native plants in the patio garden at City Winery in Chicago on the bottom photo. And at home, I was diligently saving my plastic trays and composting. But I knew that these things were not really making a whole lot of impact. And then 2020 happened, and I sort of did a bit of rearranging of my work and life and decided I wanted to really, and I think a lot of you might be going through something similar, where I wanted to kind of put all the energy of the things that I cared about and the things I was good at all into one bucket, and not have, my work and the things that I cared about be two separate things. So with a lot of meandering, I've kind of come to this place in front of you today. And my mission, I would like to share with you, is to get climate change solutions out of the lab and into the mainstream with the power of storytelling. So I want to give climate entrepreneurs, people like you, the tools that we use at places like BET, People's Choice Awards, Hyatt, to articulate and amplify your message. Today's agenda, we've got 90 minutes. The first 45 minutes, I'm going to talk to you about some tools and tactics you can use on your pitch deck. And then the next half, we're going to do a live critique of some decks. Oh, Robert's here. Hi. So today's we have a lot of people here. It's going to be participative. So participative. So please, if you haven't already, turn on your cameras, please do. I hate talking to a bunch of black boxes. It is so scary, you guys. It's so much better to see your faces. So if you do feel comfortable, please do turn on your cameras. And I just don't want this to be like I'm talking at you. Oh, he's here. So also please use the raise hand function, and that way I can kind of call on you in order. I do have a free pitch deck guide that you can download. If I wanted to just give you this before we're too far into this, in case some of you guys got to go early. And if I can find the chat, I'll put it in there for you. Here it is. So yeah, I have a free pitch deck guide that you can download at my website. And without further ado, let's talk about pitch decks. So I would like you to answer the question, what is the point of a pitch deck? And you can raise your hands and I'll call on you. Seth, what is the point of a pitch deck? You can just take
All right,
yourself off mute.
I'll break the silence. So I think of, well, I think there are probably multiple things. I'm just starting a very early stage startup. So for me, a pitch deck is a tool to explain the value proposition and maybe even more importantly, the team to potential investors or other contributors.
Great, thank you. Jesus, what's the point of a pitch deck?
Well, I more or less the same. Basically, I wanted to say that it's a tool to be able to explain better for a public that might be not as technical as I am or as we are, to understand the importance or the reasons why this idea could be worth.
The idea is worth what?
Well, the idea is worth being implemented, and and invest on it and put some effort on it. Yeah.
Thank you. Anu?
Thanks. I am going to use slightly different words. I think it's your story that helps your audience understand why they should care.
I love that. Why they should care. This is huge. Thank you so much, Anu. Robert, what do you got?
Well, I feel like I have to create a pitch deck so I can get money
Okay.
into my pitch.
Another good use for a pitch deck. Create pitch deck to get money. Is it Kirtana?
Yes. The point of a pitch deck is to focus someone's attention on a particular real estate where you can communicate ideas. So to focus their attention.
I like that. Focus someone's attention. Yeah, these are all great. Thank you. Oh, we have one more. Is it Sahil?
Yes, I'll put it in the chat, but it's to communicate, I think, the value, traction, and future potential or promise to get something in return. So it could be money, but it could be partnerships in the case of nonprofits.
Yeah, because all of these aren't necessary. Well, I guess in this. Oh wow, I really botched that. We are in today's webinar discussing pitch decks, like investment pitch decks, but we are in general, yeah, pitch decks can be. They don't have to be just for investment too. Thank you guys for raising your hands and everything. I'm going to move on because I got more for you. So I want us all to use our imaginations and step out of your own shoes and into the shoes of a VC. The sun is setting. You're ready to go home and see your family, but you've been tied up in calls all day. Your inbox is overflowing and you're feeling a lot of pressure to put your funds cash in the right places. You open up one of your emails and you see a link to a pitch deck. So in this VC's voice, what do you think is the point of a pitch deck? And again, you can raise your hands. Kirtana?
To help communicate what a company does.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to put that into this guy's voice because we're stepping inside of his head. So can you rephrase that? Like how?
What did they do?
What do they do? Great. Stefan?
And maybe also to kind of answer myself the question, what's the investment hypothesis? So if I invest, is this going to return the money that maybe my limited partners have put the money into?
Is this going to earn a return that LPs have invested in? Is that what I'm trying to say?
Maybe.
Is this going to earn a return? Let's just do that. Devin.
Is this an actual value prop for the industry that they're tackling?
Can you elaborate on that?
It's more so getting an understanding of whether the company that's pitching is actually doing something unique or providing value for the customers that they're attempting to build a company around.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I'm going to call on some people who I haven't heard from yet. Ashley.
Similar things, but yeah, is there an actual problem? And what is the market size of that problem?
Is there an actual problem? What's the market size? Okay, these are awesome. I'm going to go to Jack and then Lori, and then we're going to move on. Jack.
With the spirit of this being focused on climate, I feel like there's what's the mitigation potential or the potential to like help people adapt? Like what's the impact?
What's the impact? Excellent. Lori. I think you're on mute, Lori.
Yes, you're right. Sorry. Is this value prop, telling me enough in 30 seconds that I should stay late and read the rest of the deck?
Yes, I love this. Is this telling me enough in 30 seconds that I should stay late and read the rest of the deck? Lori, I feel like you were a plant because this is moving perfectly into the rest of my presentation. What we're going to talk a lot about today is what can we do to grab this person's attention when they are like this, when they are in this state of mind. Our pitch deck isn't really meant to convince them right away. That's what your conversation is for, but it's meant to grab their attention and keep them hooked. And I want to also ask you just how long do you think, and please put your answers in the chat for this one, how long do you think this guy's going to spend looking at your deck? You could put in a range if you're not sure. I see 2 minutes and 15 seconds, 30 seconds, 30 seconds, 2 minutes, 60 seconds, 3 minutes, 30 seconds. Yeah, so I'm seeing a lot of really short time increments. So we want to focus on what are the big ideas that we want this guy to take away in that time if they don't read every single word in the pitch deck, because they're not going to. And I put this photo here because it reminds us of what we're not designing. The context of what we're designing is super important here. So this person is not in this mindset, right? They're not sitting down and leisurely reading a book. They're like rushed and trying to get out of the office. You can think of your pitch deck like a teaser and the meetings that follow as the movie. So please don't make your pitch deck into an entire movie, because no one really has time to watch it yet. They don't really understand why they want to dedicate all that time up front. And you can talk about all of your science and technology in the diligence process. They will ask you for data. They will ask you for more questions, and you'll have plenty of time to talk all about your startup later in the process. I put this here because I work with a lot of pitch decks, and the biggest the biggest error that I'm seeing, or like opportunity for change, is that I'm seeing decks that have way too much information and usually are very, very product focused. So, and they have like tons of details about how this thing was made, when that's not really what's on this guy's mind. It's more like, why do I care about this? Is this going to give me a return? Florian, I would love for you to weigh in. Since you actually are this guy. What are you, what's on your mind when you're in this guy's shoes?
Yeah, I think you guys are all probably much better investors than I am, because I think most of those points were spot on. And I think it's very much the struggle that we have, right? That I'm looking at dozens and dozens of companies every week, right? So we really have a very limited amount of time to form an initial judgment and to see if that's a company that's worthwhile following up and worthwhile putting the time in. And I think all of the things that you guys were mentioning are valid. And in the end, if I look at a pitch deck for the very first time, I want to have some kind of cue that it's worthwhile spending my time on it, whatever that might be. And I think, you know, that's really accumulation of all the points you were mentioning, right? But there has to be something that sparks my interest and something that makes me think, hey, it's actually worthwhile digging a bit deeper and reserving maybe half an hour to really understand what they're putting out there. So I would say clear communication is super critical to give me some kind of thing to hold on to and think, okay, I should actually spend my time on this.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I also drew this diagram of a VC wondering, will I get a 10x return in 5 years? And should I take a meeting with this founder, like Florian mentioned? Like Donald Miller from StoryBrand. Donald Miller is a famous figure in the marketing space. And he famously said, if you confuse, you lose. So before we get into tools and tactics about pitch decks, we do need to talk about clarity. Because if someone doesn't understand what your company does, you're locked out of the gate before you even get your foot in the door. And the vast majority of pitch decks that I see suffer from this problem. Most of you have probably seen a pitch deck structure something like this. You can find this or some variation pretty easily. Because of that, we're not going to talk about this today. It's sort of a boilerplate structure, and I think it's fine. I think it's also fine to vary from this. If it's your first go around making a pitch deck, this would be a safe place to start. So I want to talk about the hero's journey. This is a doodle that my friend Nick made, and I love it, and I use it all the time because it's so easy to understand. This is a very old storytelling structure that humans know intrinsically. And this is kind of a higher level idea that I want you to have in the back of your mind, like higher level than this. So when I make a pitch deck, I'm always thinking about this. And this essentially is like, we'll get into it. So first of all, who wants to raise their hand and tell me who the hero is? In your pitch deck. It could vary, by the way. Anu.
Customers.
Yes, I would agree with that. Your customer is your hero. Lori, you put your hand down. Customers, or you could say clients. Sometimes I've kind of made it like more of a market story, but we'll go with customers. A lot of startups make the mistake of putting themselves in the hero position. But where you come in is actually over here. This is your product or service. Your buyer is over here. And the villain is your buyer's problem. As we all know, the problem and solution slides are extremely important. An even better way to talk about your problem is in numbers, because that hints at the market opportunity early on. And then the happily ever after, of course, is the impact of your product or service. So if I look at your deck and I can't understand what these basic 4 pieces, I'm lost, I'm confused, and I have to do a lot of work to wrap my head around why I should care about your company. So if I'm a busy investor, I'm probably not going to do all that work. I want you to think of design as a tool for communication, and design is going to help make your deck skimmable. If I could show you only one design principle and have you come away with a new way of looking at your pitch decks and anything else in the designed world, it is this. It's called visual hierarchy. And all that visual hierarchy means is, what are the first, second, and third things that you look at on a page? A designer is using design tools like scale and contrast and repetition to move your eyes towards different objects on the page in a specific order. And it's very intentional because it's moving you through the information in a logical way that's keeping you interested. This is an example of a flat visual hierarchy. So when you look at this box of circles, we don't know which circle to look at first because the designer hasn't given us any clues. But by changing the colors of all the circles except for one to almost match the background, the designer is telling us what to look at first. It's obviously obvious which one is the most important one here. So in the wild, here's another example of a flat visual hierarchy that's not helpful to us. We don't know this is a grocery store ad, a local grocery store ad. We don't know what we're supposed to be looking at because there's so many things on this page and they're all kind of the same size and all of them are super colorful. And when everything is shouting at us at the same volume, we don't know what to listen to. So we just don't listen to it at all. This is a subconsciously stressful thing for our brains to process because everything has equal weight on the page. And then if you contrast that to this Whole Foods ad, it's obvious what we're supposed to look at, the big bottle in the center. So I want to take that into the pitch deck world. We're going to look at the sample slide and we're looking at it small. The reason we're looking at it not blown up on the whole screen is because this is like a really easy way to check your visual hierarchy. So like when I was in design school, we would often be working on something on the computer, and then we'd print it out, put it on the wall, and stand, 20 or 30 feet back. So you can instantly understand what are the things that you can look at first. So on a screen, we can make it tiny, do the same thing. Looking at this, what are the biggest things on the slide? Where is there the most contrast between light and dark? And do we really need to read all of the words on the screen to understand what's going on here? If you only read this title and you only saw these boxes, you would get it. The next thing you would look at is probably these numbers over here, which also look intriguing. A lot of you have a deck already. It's probably a work in progress. So the way that I suggest of how to evaluate your current pitch deck is to start with the macro and move to the micro. So macro being, what is my basic story? That little dinosaur illustration that we looked at. And does the whole thing make my point come across in less than 90 seconds? If not, you got to work on your story structure. If we get to this and we understand, okay, I think the basic story is making sense. The whole thing is kind of making my point come across in less than 90 seconds. Then we can dive into each individual slide and kind of ask those same questions. Is this slide telling a basic story that makes sense? And does it make my point come across? And as we dive deeper into the information, is that making sense? This is a deck that I did last year. This is us looking at it from the macro perspective. And so you can see, you can kind of imagine if you got this in your inbox, you didn't know anything about this company, you can pick up some visual cues pretty quickly to understand what it's about. We're seeing big words, talking about dental insurance, We're seeing a dentist. We're seeing a happy person. We're kind of getting a sense of who their customers might be. We're seeing that it's popular and it's an alternative to dental insurance. We're also seeing that the market is big.
Right.
And then once we move into the micro and we look at the on the slide level, again, we're going to start by zooming out and seeing what am I taking away from this slide without reading everything on it, because we can't read everything on it. Well, we're seeing the title and we're seeing this big illustration with faces, and we're seeing that this is Arizona and New Mexico, and we're seeing a line that's trending upward. That's enough to grab someone's interest. And if you decide you want to linger on the page a little more, you can actually read the numbers. I took the numbers off here to make it anonymous, but you would be able to read the numbers. Oh, one more thing. Notice what the biggest words are on this slide, and notice that the biggest words on this slide are not traction. The word traction doesn't tell us anything, but this tells us a lot already. I want you to think of your pitch deck as a machine that does one thing. And that one thing is it conveys a single clear message. Just like this machine, each little part works in service of its overall purpose. Each part of the deck, each slide, each piece within each slide, like text, photos, charts, they all work in service of this message. And speaking of being pretty, notice how even the color here helps you understand what this machine is for. Imagine if this lemon squeezer had a third handle. Would that help us or hurt us in using the device? The reason we can all passively watch TV or movies and understand them without thinking is that the stories are thoughtfully served up to us with the tools available to filmmakers, like dialogue, cinematography, lighting, sound, music, special effects. They're all very deliberately getting you to pay attention to certain things on the screen. I want your pitch deck to be passively consumed by a tired VC and have them kind of ballpark get it. So what is in our toolkit? I want to start with words. Words are great. We love words. They're a very popular tool to use in pitch decks. But if we have too many words, they don't work anymore. I see this all the time. No one will read your wall of text. I want to show you some examples of text that work without being a wall of text. So we're going to look at this slide right here. We can read, we can see without reading a whole lot of text here that Flossy is an alternative to dental insurance. And then we're actually seeing these two rounded squares. We're seeing them side by side and we're showing that they're a comparison. So yet again, we're paying off that title at the top. And then this one has a little star on it showing us that it's obviously better. Now, if someone was interested in this and this got their attention, then they might choose to read these individual bullet points. But still, these are not whole sentences. These are short phrases. They've got numbers in them. This is a good example of a use of text, a pretty economic use of text. I think it's this. I didn't design this slide. I think it's clever how they use the same beginning of the sentence and then sort of you can swap out these three words. And again, you can just read the title and understand what this is about. And then if you want to dive deeper into the information, you can just start reading this stuff. And it's smaller for a reason. We want to stay away from jargon. Jargon is hot lava. Don't touch it. Sometimes if you're speaking in jargon, you might feel like you're speaking really clearly, but it sounds like this to the other person. And we absolutely don't want to confuse anybody. Whenever you're using text, it's a good idea to keep in mind for it to be short, simple, and specific. What other tools other than words do we have? Do you guys want to just put them in the chat? Anybody thoughts on tools that we have other than words for a pitch deck? Like design tools. Infographics, Jonathan, thank you. I'm gonna skip ahead to infographics. So we see a lot of these in pitch decks. They're great. What I love to see is clear, simple charts that are idiot proof. This chart could be read by a 5th grader. That's your goal. It's very easy by looking at this without even starting to look at the numbers to understand who's making the most lemons in the world. But even if you didn't get it from looking at this chart, I made it the title of the slide. That's what I want. I want you guys to just serve it up on the most obvious platter. Sometimes it feels like you're hitting people over the head with a hammer, and that's a good thing. Here's an example of a chart that would not work on a slide. This is asking me as a sleepy investor who's trying to leave the office. This is asking me to do so much work. I have to read all of these, and then I have to like read all of these and look at the numbers and then try to understand what the significance of all of this is. If you already know the significance of your data, I want you to tell it to me in big words at the top of the slide. And then even if you did use a chart like this and you wanted to put the significance of the data at the top of the slide, I would then highlight whatever piece of it, that is important. Here's another example of like, nobody's going to waste their time looking at this. It's too complicated. We did already take a look at this, but this is an example of an idiot-proof chart. Here's an example where the chart wasn't working so well in service of the message. I think it's hard to understand what's going on here. There's just a lot to read, a lot of colors. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to look at, and I'm not sure what I'm supposed to take away from the chart. What's another thing we have? Or actually, you guys already answered. I'll go through some of the answers. So you said infographics, images. Laurel said images. Thank you, Laurel. So I also stuck in here videos. I don't see a lot of videos in pitch decks, and I think that it would be nice to see more of them because they're really valuable communication pieces, and you can embed them in your DocSend, in your Google Slides, your PowerPoint. So some ways that photos can support your message. Obviously, photos of your product. Great. Photo is better than a million words. Other things that I don't see as much that I would like to is people using your product. This gives us just this photo without any words, gives us a lot of information. It's telling us how the product is used. It's showing us a bit of the result of the product, and it's showing us who might use it and where they might use it. And another thing that you might not think of is the world that your product lives in. What's the context? So even though this photo doesn't have a lemon squeezer in it, you could see that it could exist in this kitchen, and it could be a thing that this guy uses. And it definitely helps that we have some lemons in the foreground. Some ways that photos can hurt your message. Stock robot people. This is an epidemic. For every one good stock photo, there's like 500 of these. If you choose to use stock photography, you really have to sift through a lot of garbage because it's just distracting and it like feels creepy. There's also in these stock photos a ton of unnatural poses. So think about the poses that you see people in. This is actually a beautiful photo, but like nobody stands like this. So, it's distracting and it just feels very stock photo-y. Or just imagery that's unrelated to your product. I mean, unless you were doing an agriculture startup, this would just be unrelated. An example of where I saw this photos used pretty well. This is a startup called Sealed. And they evaluate homes. They like measure and evaluate homes for how much sort of leakage they're having, like energy leakage and like how energy efficient they are. And they find the hot spots, and then they like contract people to come and make repairs and retrofits. I like this because we're seeing this photo is not a photo of a heat pump. It's a photo of the place where this is relevant, and a customer can instantly relate to this image. Another photo here of a person who might use it. Again, people who might use it. I also like these diagrams. I am willing to bet that their CTO does not like these diagrams. And I'm willing to bet that they have a lot of way more complicated stuff in their lab that they're not showing you, because it's not relevant to this person who really what she wants is to save money and for her home to be comfortable for her family. Another tool we've got, icons. Icons are great. I use them a lot. They just need to you need to make sure they're always in service of your message. So they definitely need to be relevant to whatever point you're trying to make. This is one I used in a pitch deck last year. I like it because even if somebody doesn't know what BERT or GPT is, you can look at the lightning bolt and you can look at 100x and you just instantly get that this means fast. Here's an example of where the icons are not helping us at all. First of all, we have 3 icons on the page. It's hard to know what we're looking at. I guess this icon is maybe part of the logo, but this one particularly, it's distracting from the message because I can't tell what it's trying to communicate and I'm trying to figure it out. One thing about icons that I really want to share with you is there is a dead giveaway for designers when we can tell that somebody did not get their deck professionally designed. And it is mismatched icons. These icons are mismatched. So even though they are all food, you can see that, and they all have similar colors too, but you can see that all of them are slightly different. This one has thicker line weight than this one. These ones have no line weight at all. That's the first thing that stands out to me. This taco has sparkles. Nothing else has sparkles. This one feels especially different from the other ones in terms of color. This one has shadows on it and this one doesn't. So even though it's a really subtle thing, this can make a really big difference in the polish of your deck. The icons on the bottom are all from the same set. So can you kind of see how they sort of feel like they're all letters in the same font? I have a hot tip for you. Flat Icon is an awesome website that has a lot of, and I'm not affiliated with them, but I do use them. They just have lots of free icons and they're so much better than the ones that come in PowerPoint or Google Slides or whatever. But the one thing you got to look out for is over here. And you might want to take a screenshot of this. Over here, like here, I think, okay, I searched food and I get all these mismatched icons. But if you go over to this green button and you change it to say sort by style, then you get sets of icons and they look so much better. So I think that's all of the tools except for one more, which is links. I don't see a lot of links, and I think I would like to because they are a really efficient way of conveying information, and kind of like how nobody reads all of Wikipedia at once, but you know, you see a link that you're curious about and you click on it and then you read more. See, it's nice to give people the opportunity to dive deeper into information if they want to. This is a slide that I made last year where I used a lot of links. I also want to point out that I deliberately broke my wall of text rule on this one. And I did that because I wanted to give the impression of a lot of stuff. And it's also not important to read any of this small text at all. The only important thing that you need to read is over here. But if you feel curious, you can start to go into this and you can read all these articles and see how cool this company is. So now we're going to evaluate some of your pitch decks. I did receive some pitch decks from you ahead of time. And we're going to look at it through this same lens of, is the basic story making sense? Is the whole thing coming across in 90 seconds? And then if that's the case, we can dive into more individual slides. And before that, again, I want to put the free pitch deck guide into the chat in case anybody